Okay, so the Eagles just got some surprising news at the NFL trade deadline, as with tons of rumors swirling, we finally got our answer as to what Howie Roseman may do, and the results weren't exactly super exciting. But there were some exciting moves around the league today that made a big impact on the Birds, as several of the Eagles' biggest threats in the NFC just went out and made big game-changing trades, which inevitably makes the Eagles' path to the division crown and the Super Bowl even harder. Plus, we just got a big injury update on A.J. Brown ahead of the Cowboys game, while some other injury news came out regarding Dak Prescott that completely changes that matchup. So we're going to talk about that and all the other latest Eagles news starting right now. Hey guys, welcome to the Philly Fan 21 channel. If you're new, I'm Evan and I cover all things Philadelphia Eagles. And today is a very important day in the NFL, as the trade deadline is at 4 p.m, meaning that this is really the last chance for any team to make a big time move to acquire one last piece to try and help them make a run for the Super Bowl. And there's sure to be a lot of movement around the league today, and I'm sure by the time that you're watching this video, plenty of moves have already happened. And of course, there has been some news involving the Eagles as well, which we'll get into a bit later in the video. But first, I want to go further into this whole situation with Nick Sirianni that stems from the Birds' win over the Jaguars on Sunday, as of course everyone has been very critical of Sirianni and his aggressive decision making in this game, as the Eagles left a total of 9 points on the board in situations where Sirianni could have opted to take those easy points, but he didn't, and the Eagles didn't execute on those plays when they went for it, and in part because of these decisions, the game ended up being a lot closer than what it would have been. But despite those decisions not panning out, Nick Sirianni himself made it clear on Monday that he does not regret any of them, and he actually feels like he made the right calls in all those situations.
You know, you make decisions like that, whether it's a 4th down decision or whether it's a 2-point conversion from the 1-yard line. You know, I think that every time we've had a 2-point opportunity from the 1, we've taken advantage of that and went for it. And that doesn't mean we've always gotten it, but we've went for it. So you trust your process in that scenario. You trust all the work that you've done to help you make that decision. You trust your players in that scenario. You know, you can't overreact again to a play that's had as much success as that's had the last 3 years. So we have a ton of confidence in it. And again, you don't have confidence in a play unless you have confidence in a player. You know, looking back on it, and I'm thinking, would I do anything different? And to be honest, sometimes I say absolutely. In this particular case, I felt like we did the right thing in all those scenarios. And I understand that I'll always be judged on the outcome, not the process. But I have to make sure that I stick to the process.
Look, I do actually agree with Nick that you can't just completely overreact to one play that doesn't go your way and then completely switch up your entire process. Like, you got to stick with who you are, you got to trust your players, and you got to just hope to execute better next time. So I do understand where he is coming from, but that also doesn't mean that I totally agree with him either. As like I said in my video yesterday, I think it is important that Nick stays aggressive because that's just who the Eagles have been for years now, and it's paid off tremendously in the past. But I also made it clear that I think there's a clear difference between being aggressive and being stupid, and I think Nick crossed that line at times during this game against the Jaguars. And Eagles Hall of Famer Seth Joyner pretty much had that exact same assessment.
In a game that you should have won by double digits, you win by 5 points because you gave away, what do we say? Is it
9 total points?
Yeah. 9 points. There is something to be said about being aggressive. But when aggressive starts to border on the side of stupidity and idiocy, now we got a problem. Listen, when the fans start to boo because you're making bad decisions, and I've got to wonder, is Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman okay with the decisions that he made today? Are they okay with that? You know, because if they're okay with it, then that's part of the problem too.
Yeah, so again, I do think Joyner is right here in saying that this could end up being a problem for the Eagles moving forward. I mean, like he said, there is a line between aggressiveness and stupidity, and while it's important to remain aggressive, Sirianni does sometimes seem to disregard the current situation that the Eagles are in and just gets too carried away and crosses over into that stupidity and ends up really costing the Eagles like it did on Sunday. Yet, like I showed earlier in his presser on Monday, Nick doubled down on all his decisions. So again, while I like that Nick is going to remain aggressive, that to me is a little bit concerning, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see how Sirianni handles things moving forward and if there are any changes. And still, despite all the criticism and also the very real concerns with Nick, there are still plenty of people riding with him and giving him their full support. I mean, just take Philly rapper Gilly, for example, who backed Sirianni in this rant.
First thing in the morning, all they talking about, Nick Sirianni, shut the f*** up, Nick ain't going nowhere. All Nick do is win. Playoffs, Super Bowl, playoffs. The f*** y'all talking about? I like a coach that like, oh, it's 4th and 4 at the 49. F*** them we can get it. I like that.
Personally, I think Gilly's pretty funny. I don't know about you guys. And while I don't fully agree with him, I also can kind of see what he's saying. I do think that Sirianni needs to stay aggressive, and I like the fact that the Eagles go for it more than most teams do. But again, I think depending on the situation, that can change, and you just have to be smart about it. That's all I'm saying. So I definitely do think I'm somewhere in the middle on this one, and honestly, a lot of it does depend on results, but what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on this whole Nick Sirianni situation, and what do you think his approach should be moving forward? But now, regardless of your thoughts on Sirianni, we all at least should hope that he's better this coming week versus the Cowboys in what is no doubt going to be a massive game just due to the fact that, come on, it's the Eagles and the Cowboys, the best rivalry in all of football, and it's their first matchup of the season. However, a little bit of air has been taken out of the sails heading into this game, as Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott suffered multiple injuries to both his hamstring and his hand, and the Cowboys lost to the Falcons this week, and the hamstring injury caused him to leave the game in the fourth quarter. And then on Monday, Dallas got some bad news in regards to the injury, as Ian Rappaport reported, quote, Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott's hamstring injury was worse than initially feared. He is expected to miss multiple weeks, sources tell me, and at Tom Pelissaro. In fact, this is not looking like a short-term injury. Cooper Rush is the team's backup. So that's definitely terrible news for Dallas and their hopes this season, as they currently sit at just 3-5 and have lost 3 straight games. And for this game against the Eagles, that all but guarantees that Prescott will miss this matchup in Jerry World, meaning that it's going to be Cooper Rush starting at quarterback for the Cowboys. And the last time Rush played the Eagles, things didn't go great for him, as not only did they lose the game, but he also threw for just 181 yards with a completion percentage less than 50%, along with 1 touchdown to 3 interceptions. And former and current Eagles safety CJ Gardner-Johnson got him twice, while Darius Slay also got him once in that game. So hopefully we see a repeat of that, this time in Texas on Sunday, and the Eagles defense just has another dominant performance versus Rush and the Cowboys. Offensively, however, the Eagles are going to be hoping that they're not down one of, if not their best player in A.J. Brown, as he of course exited this past game against the Jaguars with a knee injury, and he did not return. And coming out of the game, there was actually some questions and concerns as to how serious the injury could possibly be, and if it could maybe cause AJ to miss some significant time. But the good news is that all the updates since the game have been all very, very good. Starting with the one on Monday morning that I actually talked about yesterday from Jordan Schultz, saying that it was believed AJ Brown avoided any sort of serious injury and that he'd be back sooner rather than later, but he still did have an MRI scheduled for later in the day just to be safe. And then shortly after that report came out, Nick Sirianni was at the podium where he was asked about Brown's injury, and while he didn't really provide too much information, he did give us a small piece of information that was definitely a little promising.
Yeah, we'll see as the week progresses. Bummed anytime you don't have AJ in the game because he's such a great player. But we'll see how it goes. Haven't got with the medical staff today yet. I'll get with them a little bit later today. But AJ was in good spirits today. We'll see how it goes.
Hearing AJ was in good spirits on Monday morning is definitely a good sign, and then a final update from Adam Schefter really drove it home that AJ was in fact okay and the injury wasn't serious. As Monday afternoon, he tweeted out, quote, tests today showed that the knee injury that caused Eagles wide receiver AJ Brown to leave Sunday's win over the Jaguars will leave him being considered day-to-day. Eagles breathing a sigh of relief that Brown's injury is not more serious. So obviously, again, this is all great news that the injury is not going to be a serious one and he's not going to miss significant time. And now the question is just going to be whether AJ will be ready to go for the game this week against the Cowboys. But we'll obviously get more information as the week goes on, and I'll make sure to keep you guys updated on that. But now, switching over to a couple standout players for the Eagles this past week, we got to give a shout out to the linebacker duo of Zack Baun and Nakobe Dean, as what they've been doing over the past several weeks really is just unreal. But real quick, before we get into that, I do want to say, if you are enjoying this video and you don't want to miss any other Eagles coverage or content just like this coming throughout the rest of this entire season, then make sure you subscribe, and also really importantly, turn on notifications so you're notified instantly when one of these videos is uploaded. Trust me, you guys are not going to want to miss any of the Eagles coverage I got coming on this channel throughout this season. I cover the Birds pretty much daily here, so if you do want to stay up to date on all the latest news, again, hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell, and also drop a like to show some support if you are enjoying this video. Let's see if we can get to 700 likes today. And now, with all that being said, let's get back into the video. So as I was saying, two Eagles that deserve a ton of recognition for how they've been playing recently are their two starting linebackers in Zack Baun and Nakobe Dean. as both guys obviously came up big in this game, as Bond was a monster as he had 10 tackles, 2 passes defended, and an interception, and while Nakobe Dean only had 2 tackles, he still played a really good game overall, as he also had 2 pass breakups and an interception, which was the game winner. And together, these linebackers accomplished a feat that was really impressive, as for the second week in a row now, they were the top 2 graded linebackers across the entire NFL, which is just insane. And if you're an Eagles fan, you gotta be grateful for the high-level play of these 2 backers, just considering how rare it is for the Eagles to have high-level play at that position. And personally, I mean, I've seen enough. I want to keep rolling with this duo at linebacker for years to come, and I think the Eagles need to do whatever they can to extend Zack Baun as soon as possible, because he's just been an awesome free agent acquisition by Howie Roseman on a 1-year deal, and I think we gotta find a way to keep him here long term. However, one free agent addition who hasn't been nearly as impressive to start his Eagles tenure is edge rusher Bryce Huff, as he has just 1.5 sacks and 8 total tackles on the year so far, despite coming in on a 3-year, $50 million plus contract. Now, Huff has started to trend up a little bit in recent weeks as he was finally starting to generate some pressure in the pass rush after the coaching staff made an adjustment to how they were using him. But then jump ahead to this past week versus the Jaguars and things got really weird, as Huff only played 6 snaps all game long, so naturally Nick Sirianni was asked why that was after the contest, and he chalked it up to an injury scare that happened right before the game.
You know, Bryce came off the field after walkthroughs. Again, won't talk too much about injury, but you know, his hand was bothering him, and he was getting treatment in the locker room after not walkthroughs, after warm-ups, and so we were trying to protect him there.
There's no doubt that this is kind of a weird situation, and hey, Sirianni could completely be telling the truth here, and Huff could have been dealing with an injury which led to his lack of playing time, but some people took it further and speculated that it could have something to do with the upcoming trade deadline that, again, is today, and the Birds possibly could have been looking to move him. And interestingly enough, on Monday, Tom Pelissero was on the Rich Eisen show, and he mentioned Huff by name as someone to watch at the deadline.
There certainly is going to be interest in guys like Bryce Huff, who was one of the Eagles' big free agent signings, played all of 6 snaps yesterday after getting his hand apparently banged up in warm-ups or something. That's a name that I would think is going to get some potential action.
So this was certainly very interesting to hear, considering that the Eagles had just signed Huff to a big contract in March, so to trade him now would be to give up on him really early on, and also with his value probably being at an all-time low just due to his lack of production to start the year, you probably couldn't get that much for him, so I just personally didn't think the trade was going to happen, and I was right, as Huff stayed put as the deadline came and went, but still, it was definitely interesting to hear his name in trade rumors this early on into his Eagles tenure, and now the Birds just are going to have to hope that Huff can figure it out and become the player that they signed him to be. And honestly, the most surprising news regarding the Eagles at the trade deadline isn't what they did, but it's in fact that they didn't do anything at all, combined with what the teams around them and their rivals did, as early in the morning, one of the biggest contenders and challengers to the Eagles in the NFC in the Detroit Lions made a big move to acquire someone that many people speculated could be an Eagles trade target, as they got Browns pass rusher Zadarius Smith along with a 2026 7th round pick for a 2025 5th and a 2026 6th. So with that, the Lions got their replacement for Aiden Hutchinson and bolster their pass rush. Meanwhile, the Cowboys traded for wide receiver Jonathan Mingo, but this isn't a huge trade as Mingo hasn't really done too much in 3 years with the Panthers, and also the Cowboys give up a 4th round pick in this trade, which is kind of funny, so it seems to me like the Cowboys kind of got fleeced here. But even though this is not a big trade, the Commanders, who of course currently lead the NFC East, did make a big trade as they swapped a 3rd, a 4th, and a 6th round pick for Saints star corner Marshon Lattimore and a 5th rounder. And while Lattimore is still recovering from a hamstring injury, which could keep him out for a little bit longer, when he is on the field, he's obviously a great player, and he'll provide a major boost to the Commanders' secondary and pass defense, which is already ranked 5th in the NFL. And this just solidifies that Washington feels really good about where they're at right now, and they think they can make a run. And for the Eagles, this obviously impacts them because the Commanders are the team that they're in a tight race with for the NFC East crown right now, and adding Lattimore only makes them better, and they probably made the move partially to combat the star-studded passing attack that the Eagles have. So Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, and DeVonta Smith are going to have an even bigger challenge when facing the Commanders now, but I'm still confident in our guys, and even with the Birds not making any moves, I'm honestly still happy with where they're at, and I'm confident in their chances to win this division and make a run. But now, of course, as I talked about earlier in the video, it's Dallas week, and there's going to be tons of news leading into the matchup, and I'm going to be covering all of it here on this channel. So again, if you guys don't want to miss any of that, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, and also drop a like to show some support. It really does help me out a ton. Again, let's see if we can get to 700 likes today, and also leave a comment down below just regarding anything that I talked about in this video, and if you want to watch another Eagles video recapping the Eagles' thrilling win over the Jaguars, you can check this out right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.